Hello, welcome to this channel. My name is Janet. I'm working through the King James's Bible. Today I am in the book of Chronicles, part 2, and I'll be covering today chapters 20, 21 and 22. So I'll be summarising each of those chapters right after this interlude. So chapter 20 opens with troops marching towards King Jehoshaphat of the Judah tribe. Now these troops are coming from Moab, Ammon and other areas to battle with the people. Now the king isn't aware of this until some people come and tell him exactly where they're at. And he gets the news that they're coming from behind the sea of Syria, and right now they are in Hazan Tamar. So a fearful king, Jehoshaphat, he's feeling guilty actually because, he'd gone over to the northern troops of Israel and helped them go to war, which wasn't a great thing because they were worshipping false gods at the time. So he's kind of allied himself with these wicked people in God's eyes. So he's quite fearful of what is coming at him and he goes to God for help. And in addition to that, he proclaims a fast throughout all of Judah, so all of the people start worshipping God. Then Jehoshaphat, in the temple of the Lord, with all of the people gathering around him, starts praising and asking for God's help. And he reminds him of the covenant that he's made with King David, because he was loyal to God for most of his days. Yes, he may have fallen a few times, but he always came back to God. And for that reason, God made this covenant that he would protect the people. So that is why Jehoshaphat is like calling on him now, calling on this covenant, please help protect us. And he's sort of proclaiming, are you not the God in heaven ruling over all nations? So he knows, and he's putting his faith in the God of Israel. So while the people are all gathered here, and Jehoshaphat is praising, the Spirit of God comes into the prophet Jahaziel, and he says, listen one and all, do not be afraid nor dismayed because of this great multitude that is coming towards them. This war is not yours, this war is God's. Then he gives the people directions for tomorrow. They are to go towards these troops that are coming at them, down to the brook, before the wilderness of Jerel. And he said no fighting is to be conducted, to just stand still and to watch God in action. And then he ends saying, the Lord is with you. So the people all bow their heads and worship God. The Levite priests then stand and praise the Lord, and then everyone's voices are raised loud and high. So the next day they rise, and Jehoshaphat says to the people, have faith in God. He wants them all to keep the faith and believe, and we will prosper, he says. Then he appoints the musicians. They start playing their music as they move to this place to face their enemies. And as they're going, they're saying, praise the Lord, for his mercy endures forever. So whilst they're singing and praising, God sets up ambushes, which cause the enemies of Ammon, of Moab, and Mount Seir, these people all coming, to start attacking each other. And they're fighting and they're fighting and they're killing one another to the point everyone in the army is wiped out. And so the Israelites are just stood there with suddenly all of these dead bodies around them. And these bodies had a lot of valuables on them, so they were able to loot and take all of that with them as well. So not only has God wiped out their enemies, he's also left them with an abundance. So the people then take all of this with them and then return to Jerusalem singing and praising God. So the Lord had prevailed and God gave Jehoshaphat rest that day. Then as we come to the close of chapter 20, we read that Jehoshaphat, king over Judah, started at age 35 years old. That's when he was anointed king. And he reigned for 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother was named Azubah, and he walked in the way of his father Asa. The high places were not removed, it's noted. It also notes that King Jehoshaphat, he did side with the northern king, King Ahaziah, who was a wicked man. It also notes here that he joined again with King Ahaziah of Israel. So he went back to that northern side again. This time he was trying to build ships with him to go to Tarshish. But God came in, wrecked those ships, and they were not able to voyage there. So that is where this chapter closes. He was trying to go back again over to that evil side, and God has ended any connection possible there. So maybe he learned from that, we don't know, but that's how chapter 20 closes. So in chapter 20 we start with King Jehoshaphat. He dies now, and he's buried in the city of David. So his son Jehoram becomes the next king over Judah. Now he has 6 other brothers that are named here. If you want to find out those names, check out the link under this video for chapter 21. And he gave all the brothers gold, silver, stones and fortified cities. And Jehoram, he was the firstborn. That's why he ended up being the king out of all of them. So the other brothers, they had their own cities, they had their own wealth, but Jehoram was the only one who was to become king, next in line to Jehoshaphat. Now once he becomes king, he strengthened himself, and then he kills all of his brothers by the sword, and even some of his officials. So he was a pretty ruthless king to do that to his own flesh and blood. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigns for 8 years. Now he married King Ahab on the northern side, his daughter, so she was pretty wicked and he's aligning himself with her. But God did not destroy them. You think he would because he was already starting out in a pretty wicked place, but because he has that covenant with King David way back, because he was loyal, King Jehoram is not destroyed by God. Now during his reign, Edom revolted against him, and they made a king for themselves. Now King Jehoram tried to attack them to get them back in line, but he failed. And then he has another revolt from Libnah, because again he's not following God's laws, so they don't want anything to do with him either. So he is losing people by being this wicked king. He also makes high places, and he starts leading the Judah people that are under him astray. So a letter from the prophet Elijah is sent to him, and it says this in the letter: "Because you've killed your brothers, led the Judah tribe into harlotry like the wicked house of Ahab, and you're not following in the ways of your fathers who were loyal to God, you and your people will be struck down by a serious illness that is going to affect your intestines. And day by day, it's going to be a slow, painful illness. And this is their punishment from God for their sins." Then Jehoram has further trouble stirred up. Now he's got the Philistines after him. He's also got the Arabians after him and Ethiopians. They invade. And they took all of his possessions in his palace. They also took all of his sons and wives and only left one, and that was his youngest son, Jehoahaz. Now after all of this invasion and everything else, this is when the disease strikes. And it struck King Jehoram. So he ends up with this disease of the intestines, which lasts for 2 years. He's got a 2-year painful illness, and eventually his intestines come out and he died. So he had no burning like they did with the royal fathers. He didn't get that. He didn't get a tomb either, and nobody was sorry really for his death. And so as we close this chapter, it reminds us that he was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 8 years. Until his very painful ending, and then he was buried in the city of David. That closes chapter 21. Now Ahaziah, he becomes the next king in Jerusalem, because the Arabians had killed all of the other sons. Now Ahaziah is 42 years old when he becomes king, and he reigned only for 1 year, but it was a very eventful year, and we're about to find out what was involved. Now his mother Athaliah was a wicked woman. She is from the house of Ahab, and she counsels Ahaziah in the way he's going to rule the people, so it's not good. So his advice by the house of Ahab is to go to war with the king of Syria, Hazael, and this war takes place at Ramoth Gilead. And he's joined again by the northern side. So Joram, he's the king over there. They're joined together to go to Ramoth Gilead to take on the Syrian king. And during this battle, Jehoram is wounded. So he ends up leaving the battle. And during this battle, Jehoram, King Jehoram of Israel, he is wounded in the battle. So he eventually, after all of this, he goes back to Jezreel to heal his wounds. And so the king of the Judah tribe, Azziah, he goes to visit him because he's sick. And it's at this point that they come together and go against the prophet Jehu, who is sent by God to basically clear the house of Ahab, the king of Ahab, because he'd done so much bad. God had said, your whole house is going to be wiped out. So he's on this mission from God to kill Joram. He comes there to kill him, and then he kills Azziah because he, again, is linked in with the house of Ahab. So both kings are then killed, and all of Azziah's brothers. So they are not in line to become king. Now, when Azariah's mother finds out that he has been killed, she then goes on to kill all of the heirs of Judah. So she's trying to wipe them all out because she wants to be queen. Now, the daughter of Hazael, she manages to grab her nephew Joab and she hides him in a bedroom. And then they hide him in the temple of the Lord for 6 years along with his nurse while she reigns queen, the mother, over Judah. And this is where we close our final chapter for today, chapter 22. So there we have it. We have had 3 pretty eventful chapters. We have Jehoshaphat's victory because he called on God and God came to his rescue, ambushed those people, they end up killing each other, and that frees them of any battle really that they would have had to fight. But sadly we have Jehoram coming in as king when he dies, Jehoshaphat, and it's a pretty bad start for his first reign, killing all of his brothers and then carrying on in the way that he did, which was just wicked. So we're seeing a quick descend of the Judah tribe here, and we've had a killing as well on the northern side, so there'll be a new king on that side as well. So things are starting to go downhill from back in the days of Solomon. Things are really not great in the Judah tribe. I mean, they're split down the middle now. They're not one tribe. We've got northern tribe, we've got southern tribe, and the northern tribe was already on the demise, but now the southern tribe are heading that way too. So we will find more details as we've already read Kings, so we do know kind of what happens, whereas Chronicles is giving us more detail, just filling in the gaps there, and then we'll be finished the book of Chronicles too, and we'll be moving on to more content, new content. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your time, and I will be back again soon. Take care now. Bye.